afternoon.
Good afternoon.
On Monday, April 6th and Tuesday, April 7th, Matt Sharver, our Director of Watershed Programs, and Robin Halprin, our Deputy Director of Watershed Programs, provided updates to the Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights City Councils on our work at the Shaker Lakes with the assistance of Angela Jones, our Senior Manager of Government Affairs. So we have two efforts at the Shaker Lakes: minor maintenance at Lower Lake Dam, and Lower Lake is shown here within the Domebrook watershed, and then the larger Domebrook restoration at Horseshoe Park project, which is shown here. Both of these projects are to assist the cities in addressing their compliance issues at these dams within the parameters of our regional stormwater management program. And the cities, as you know, have not made a decision on how they will address the larger dam safety and dam compliance issues at Lower Lake. So the minor maintenance, which is shown here at Lower Lake, will begin later in April and take approximately 3 to 5 days. You see on the left maintenance that we did in 2020, where we placed rock on the lake face of the dam in order to minimize erosion continuing there at that dam. And then somehow in 2025, that rock has disappeared. And so we will now be replacing that rock, as we're required to do, one, under our obligations under the Regional Stormwater Management Program, and then in relation to the permit that we have from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So that is the maintenance work at Lower Lake. And then for the Domebrook restoration at Horseshoe Park, we're awaiting the complete permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Ohio EPA. And then, as you know, the Domebrook restoration at Horseshoe Park project, and this is a graphic that you've seen many times. It shows the location of the dam that will be removed, and then the restoration of the north and middle branches of Domebrook through that. So that project will remove the dam hazard and approximately 180,000 cubic yards of sediment that has accumulated behind the dam in the lake bed. We will restore 5,700 linear feet of Domebrook and provide a significant environmental uplift in this watershed. So this project, as you know, does involve significant tree removal, as we have presented to the cities throughout the design, development, and review process. And we updated them, Matt and Robin updated both cities on this as well at these meetings last week. So our team, led by the nationally known landscape architecture firm of Stimson out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, has been very strategic in this tree removal. And as you see here, actually, John, if you want to go back one slide, the district surveyed over 3,000 trees at this 60-acre park, and there are obviously thousands of additional trees in the park that were not surveyed and will not be impacted. That tree removal focused on minimizing the impact to trees while we restore the stream and deal with the significant amount of sediment that is there. And in terms of that tree removal, John, if you go to the next one, a little over 1,000 trees will be removed. We continue to revise that as we refine the design and bring that down to the 100% design. As we presented to the cities, that breaks down to 158 dead standing trees, 344 trees that are smaller, so less than 10 inches diameter breast height, and then about 52% of those trees are this 563 larger 10-inch diameter breast height and larger trees. Very strategic in terms of that tree removal, and then we will replant all native species, over 1,100 trees that will be planted by the district and maintained into perpetuity by the district as part of this project, with additional almost 7,000 shrubs and over 7,000 live stakes that are part of that restoration. So that was all part of the update that was provided to the cities last week. And then this week, on Tuesday, April 14th and Wednesday, April 15th, Matt, Angela, and Donna Friedman, our manager of community watershed coordination, presented at 2 meetings in the city of Cleveland at the request of City Council President Griffin, as well as area residents, both on the status of the dams as well as the possible implications of a dam failure. We were asked to present at the Ward 6 meeting and at the neighbor to neighbor meeting, primarily for Ward 9 and Ward 6 residents. At both meetings, we focused on the status of the dams and provided a high-level overview of the emergency action plans in the case of dam failure. We were joined at both meetings by our colleagues from the Cuyahoga County Office of Emergency Management, which would obviously have a central role in the catastrophic event of a dam breach or dam failure. And I'd like Matt to briefly run through those slides that we presented at those meetings, because I think it's quite illustrative to see those emergency action plans.
So these are the emergency action plan. So there's an emergency action plan for any class 1 high hazard dam throughout the state of Ohio. So it's not indifferent here for the Shaker Lakes dams to have this. So both dams have this, and all 3 cities are coordinated in that emergency action plan. And the main purpose, directed by Ohio Department of Natural Resources, who is the regulatory agency responsible to make sure that class 1 high hazard dams have an emergency action plan, is simply to protect human life and prevent downstream significant property damage. So these are the areas, John, you can click through. These are the areas within the Donebrook corridor that are of concern. So obviously immediately adjacent to the dam, if it were to catastrophically fail, would be a concern. The roadways immediately downstream or even far downstream are a concern. Ambler Park, part of the gorge area, and then into Ambler Park would be a concern. We know from our past information to the board and our master planning that Case Western Reserve campus area, Stearns, MLK, and University Circle, the low point in the watershed, certainly a concern. And then moving further downstream on our way out to Lake Erie, all of Martin Luther King Jr. Drive would be of a concern there as well. And we've seen that area flood in the past. So this is a graphic that we shared in the meetings this week. What this shows you is the lower lake on the far right. You can see the road crossings, and what you're looking at in the middle of the screen there is the gorge area. And then on the far left is the Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard crossing at Fairhill Boulevard. And John, if you click, we'll have an image show you that this is the pathway if a catastrophic failure would occur. So the pink or purple lines outline the 100-year flood event, and the blue lines outline the probable maximum flood. The probable maximum flood event is what the state requires in terms of a dam break analysis to be done to understand where does the water go, where does the sediment from the lake bed go, where does the debris that's picked up all along the way go, and how does that react, and what downstream hazards are in play. I'll just pause here at Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. If the lower lake dam were to catastrophically fail, and that could be during a rain event, in this case we're talking about the probable maximum flood, within 9 minutes MLK Jr. Boulevard is under 17, almost 17 feet of water there, with about 19,000 cubic feet of water a second moving across that roadway. So a significant hazard there. John, if you go to the next slide, this will show you the downstream portion. So here we're looking at, once we move through Ambler Park, we're now entering the University Circle area, the CSX road crossing. John, go ahead and hit the graphic here. You'll see the inundation mapping here. Now the hydraulic, the dam break analysis stops at Euclid Avenue. We know that that continues on down through the cultural gardens. But for this graphic, the CSX railroad crossing, there'd be about a 5-foot inundation underneath the rail crossing there. So we know that that low point coming down the hill on MLK is a hazard. And then obviously the Case Western Reserve campus buildings, you can see here, those are the buildings in white outlined in green. Those would be inundated at the lower levels for sure. So this is what we've articulated in our meetings this week, so that folks that live and traverse these areas are aware. And then we explained how they would be alerted to the warnings that would come from emergency management coordination through the activation of the emergency action plan. John, if you just go to the next. And so I would be remiss if I didn't remind or acknowledge the fact that our friends to the north in Michigan and Wisconsin are dealing with this very issue this week. There are 2 dams, the Bel Air Dam in Michigan and the Sheboygan Dam. Both were under watch, and there's seepage through the dam. So the rain events that have occurred up there are causing emergency action plans to be activated there. So this happens all over the country. And so that's why we continue to be prepared here.
Thank you, Matt. So President Brown, we just wanted to make sure we had presented that information this week. We wanted to share that with the board as well. We appreciated the opportunity to have those conversations this week with interested residents and the council members who invited us. I know, President Brown, that you were, I've heard that you were also at that meeting. I don't know if
Yeah, there
you
was
wanted me to
somebody,
pause for
there
any.
was somebody who looked like me, so
Yeah.
the audience. Yeah, no, it was a very good meeting. I was there for a number of reasons. I've spent probably all of my adult life, a part of my childhood in the Donebrook watershed. Whether I was working with the city or in my role on Donebrook Watershed Partnership or just a resident, I actually lived on Fair Hill for, 10, 12 years. So I'm very familiar with what the history is there. There was a comment that was made, and I don't want this to be lost because many people look at the projects that we do, and we always have a good engineering firms that do the design and implementations for us. But this particular project, Shaker Lakes, we actually have a landscape architect that is the lead on the project, and it's not just a landscape architect, and it's a world-renowned.
Absolutely. So Stimson Architecture, Landscape Architects out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. I encourage anyone to go onto their website, see their projects across the country. They've also done significant work with Cleveland Museum of Art. They brought their A game to this in terms of helping to make sure that this stream restoration was done, understanding the context coming into Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights, which are also known around the country for the design of those two communities. And you can see that in the work and the renderings that have been presented throughout the development of this project.
Yeah, so I make the comment because it's not our customary practice.
That's right.
A, but B, we realize just the importance of this project and the desire to get it right. And so in that vein, we have a landscape architect on the lead who will work with the support of a civil engineer to do the civil engineering aspects as it relates to the stream, et cetera. But as for park design, amenities, all that other things that we're collaborating with Cleveland Heights and Shaker on, we were sensitive to the fact that what gets built has to be their A game, as you said. So I think it's important for us to be said publicly that we don't take this lightly. A lot of folks look at us and we have this discussion internal a lot that, people look at the sewer district and they think, oh, it's just sewers. And there's a lot more to what we do than just sewers. The fact that we've been in stormwater for a while now, and stormwater brings a whole lot of other aspects of engineering, other things to the forefront. So while we've sharpened our skill set internally, we recognize the fact that when we are building these type of scale projects, we need to bring the best and brightest, which is what we do on all of our design projects. We make sure that we have an A team that is collaborating on the project. So I think maybe we'll spend more time in the future talking about the expansion of not just our role and responsibility, but our approach to how we go about delivering service so that people understand who we are and what we do and how serious we take our role in this community.
That's right. I appreciate that, President Brown. One thing I'll add to your point is not only was it landscape architect led, when you do a stream restoration, you design the stream for the watershed that you have. And the Domebrook watershed has been heavily impacted with development across its history. And so we need to design a stream that will be stable so that this significant ecological uplift for the Domebrook watershed. And that's exactly what our team has put together. So to continue to help folks understand that, Matt and his team and Jean, working with Jean, have put together a series of public tours that we will kick off in May. So here's the sign up, neorsd.org/Domebrook. I'm sure everybody's got that like on their screen, whatever that, when you open your phone. So those tours will be on May 5th, May 19th, and June 9th. Pre-registration is required. We will keep those tours small so that folks can have a chance to really walk the project and understand the project. We'll have a waiting list, and we're happy to have additional tours if we get a lot of interest. So that's our report, President Brown.
Very good. Thank you.